Alright everybody, in this one I'm going to be showing you guys how to create those emotional guitar beats all from scratch in FL Studio. So let's not waste any more time, let's just jump straight in. Alright, so we are now here in FL Studio 21 as you guys can see. First things first, we need to pick a BPM for this one. And since we are going for a more emotional vibe, I actually want to speed it up a little bit. So we're going to go from 140 to 165. Now that we have the BPM down, we obviously need to pick the first instrument. In this case, I'm going to be going with this electric vintage guitar in Contact. So in my opinion, electric guitars are definitely the best when it comes to emotional guitar beats. Obviously, you can use whatever electric guitar you want to, but in this case, we're just going to be using this one. Now that we have the BPM and the guitar we're going to be using, we need to pick a scale. In this case, we're going to be going with the E minor scale, so let's just click this right here. Since we are working in the E minor scale, let's just start off with that E5. Now, since our BPM is a bit faster, we're also going to extend this out until this second bar over here. Now, let's just make a simple trad, so skip the first highlighted note in the scale and go for the G5. Do the same thing again, skip this A5. And put one on the B5. Now to make this a little bit more interesting, we're just gonna invert this middle note, so make sure to highlight it and pitch it up by 1 octave. Also hit Alt S to strum them while you have the velocity a little bit lower than usual. Alright, so that is pretty much perfect for the first chord, but we obviously need to build off of this a little bit. So to really get that emotional vibe in your pattern, you want to make sure to leave some space in between your notes. So what I mean by this is that you don't want to be using half steps, meaning notes that are right next to each other. This is going to create a lot of tension, so this is kind of what you don't want to do when you're making emotional stuff. So to actually relieve that tension and get more of that emotional and sad vibe we're going for, you want to make sure to pitch this down to the next note in the scale. In this case, we're just repeating the E over here. Now let's make a new chord, so let's just copy the D5 right here, and we're kind of going to do the same thing again, so just make that simple trad chord like this, and we're going to do the same thing again, inverting the middle note up 1 octave, but as most of you guys can probably see, we're using the half steps. So instead of having this hit on the F sharp right here, we're just going to pitch it back down to the E, so these two are the same. Right, so this is going to be our second chord. Now again, we want to have some more movement like we have on the end right here. So we can actually just copy this over here and over here, so we kind of have it in an upwards motion. Once we have this, we're just going to copy the whole thing over and pitch this down by 5 semitones. And then we can do a little bit of a switch up over here. So let's shorten this and put it right here. As you guys can see, this C sharp isn't in the right key, so let's just pitch it up by 1 semitone so it fits nicely on the D6. And that is pretty much a super simple way to get that emotional chord progression with the guitar. Now that we have that guitar pattern, let's just quickly add some simple effects. So for the effects, we're not going to overdo it. I want the guitar to have a super natural sound to it. So we're just going to start off by adding a little bit of roam at about 17% to really create that ambience and add the reverb to the guitar. Then I'm also just going to add a simple EQ to cut out a little bit of the low end and some of the boxy mids right here. Lastly, we're just going to add a RC20 using the 103 preset while removing the noise. So now with the effects, this is how the guitar sounds. So as you guys can hear, the effects really give it that depth. Fills out the whole sound nicely. Alright, so now that we have the main chord progression, we also want to add a little bit of a guitar top line to really finish off the movement. Now with the second part of the guitar, I personally just like finding a nice electric guitar phrase. So I went into Splice and I just found this phrase right here. I just feel like I can mess a little bit around with this and see if it sounds nicely with the rest of the guitar pattern. Alright, so I very simply just cut it up like this. So just a little bit of a smooth vibe on top of our main guitar. Now with the effects on this one, I pretty much just copy pasted the same effects from the first guitar over to the second phrase. I'm also going to go in with the sound shifter and just see how it sounds when we pitch it up as well. Yes, I think we can mess a little bit around with this. Just have it pitched up and pitched down. With those two elements, let's try to go in and add a bass for the low end. So for the bass, I'm just going to be going with the Scarby Rickenbacker bass in Contact. It's pretty much my go-to bass. You guys see me using it all the time. Alright, so we're just going to try to follow the root notes right here. Let's actually try to do a cool little chop right here. So I'm just going to shorten this and we can have this D4 play. Ooh, that's fire. We're definitely keeping that in for sure. Right now the melody is really starting to come together, but I'm gonna open up this rows in Omnisphere and I'm just gonna try to mess a little bit around with the same chord progression from the main guitar. So I pretty much just copy pasted the same pattern over to the roads. Now I'm just gonna highlight everything and hit Shift D to shorten everything. And then we can also try to just extend it out like this. So it's just to add some more movement right here. Alright, now to finish off the melody, I'm quickly just gonna add a couple of perks, maybe a few textures, and also some accents in the background. Alright, so now that we have the whole sample finished, let's quickly add some drums. As for the drum sounds I'm using, they are of course coming from my Mirage multi-kit. So if you guys like any of the drum sounds you hear in this video and you want to have access to 5 more kits together with the drum kit all in one bundle, you can obviously check out the Mirage multi-kit on my website, which is BBMarko.com, or you guys can just click the first link down below. So when it comes to the drums, since we have a lot of stuff going on with the melody, we're just going to try to keep the drums super simple and have them bouncy. So let's just start off with a standard clap. Just keep this very simple like this. Get the bounce going. Time for some hi-hats. So for your hi-hats, I'm keeping them very simple on the start. And then we're spicing them more up towards the end right here. Let's add a standard little snare bounce. Copy that over as well. I'm also going to go over to the control panel over here, and I'm actually going to switch around the panning a little bit. So this one we're going to pan a little bit to the left, while this one we're going to pan a little bit to the right. Yeah, it's very subtle, but it definitely adds a little bit of that spice to it. Now let's go in and add some open hats as well. So we're having one long lasting on the first hit, and we're also going to spice things up a little bit with a little bit of a shorter one throughout the whole beat. Let's go with the kicks. With the bass, it's crazy. Alright, so when we don't have the standard bass playing, we're obviously going to add 808. So we're pretty much just going to copy paste the kick pattern over to the 808, but we obviously need to adjust the root notes. So just a cool little 808 bounce right here. Alright, so now that we have the drums finished, I'm quickly just going to arrange the whole beat and let's take a final listen. Alright, so we have a little bit of a longer intro on this one.
Shut up, Marco.
Things build up a little bit right here. So we have the bass coming. So that's the main guitar. And it just builds up to the drop. Vocals, 808. That's crazy right there. Second part of vocals. Here we have the verse. Teasing the vocals on the end. And it drops in again. Then we come into a bridge right here. Just that underwater type of sound. Filters out everything. Then it drops right in.